In the far reaches of the galaxy, the Sargacs were a name spoken in hushed tones, their reputation steeped in fear and blood. A species of advanced predators, they were known for their ruthless efficiency in hunting down other sentient beings for sport. For centuries, they dominated the cosmos, leaving a trail of decimated civilizations in their wake. No one dared challenge the Sargacs, for their very presence signaled inevitable death. They thrived on the thrill of the hunt, relishing the cries of their prey as they closed in for the kill. Among the stars, they were the ultimate predators, feared and respected by all who knew of them. The Sargacs society was built on the foundations of strength and survival. From birth, every Sargacs was trained to be a warrior. Their society was hierarchical, with the strongest and most cunning individuals rising to positions of power. Their training was brutal, designed to weed out the weak and ensure that only the most capable survived. This warrior class was revered, their prowess in battle unmatched. They were equipped with advanced technology that enhanced their natural abilities, making them nearly unstoppable. Their armor was lightweight yet impenetrable, capable of withstanding even the most powerful energy weapons. Their weapons, too, were state-of-the-art, designed for maximum lethality. Every Sargacs hunter carried a plasma blade, a weapon that could cut through almost anything, and a long-range rifle with advanced targeting systems, ensuring that their prey had little chance of escape. Over the centuries, the Sargacs had embarked on countless hunts, each more deadly than the last. They had brought entire civilizations to their knees, their superior tactics and technology rendering any resistance futile. From the lush jungles of Viridian Prime to the icy wastelands of Xylora, no species had been able to withstand their onslaught. The Sargacs had turned the hunt into an art form, perfecting their strategies and honing their skills with each conquest. Their undefeated streak was a testament to their dominance, a streak that had continued unbroken for millennia. To the Sargacs, the galaxy was their hunting ground, and every other species was merely prey to be hunted, captured, and ultimately destroyed. When the Sargacs set their sights on the human colony of Epsilon 4, they did so with the same arrogance and confidence that had carried them through countless conquests. Epsilon 4 was a relatively new colony, small and isolated, far from the central hubs of human civilization. To the Sargacs, it appeared weak, defenseless, and ripe for the taking. The colony's defenses were rudimentary at best, and its population was untrained in the art of war. The Sargacs saw it as an easy target, a simple hunt to pass the time before they moved on to more challenging prey. They had no reason to believe that this hunt would be any different from the countless others they had embarked on before. The humans of Epsilon 4 were just another species to be added to their list of conquests, another notch in their ever-growing tally of victories. But the Sargacs had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated the resilience of humanity, and they were unaware of the presence of a single individual who would turn their hunt into a nightmare. The Grey Wolf, a human operative who had spent his life in the shadows, was living on Epsilon 4, and he had no intention of letting the Sargacs claim his new home. The stage was set, the players were in place, and the hunt was about to begin. But this time, the roles would be reversed, and the hunters would become the hunted. Among the shadows of the galaxy, the name Grey Wolf was whispered with a mix of reverence and fear. A legendary human operative, he had built a reputation as an unseen force, a ghost who moved silently through the dark corners of the universe. No one knew his real name, and few had ever seen his face. But his actions spoke louder than any name could. For decades, he operated in the most dangerous regions of space, taking on missions that others deemed impossible. He was a master of the art of war, but his methods were far from conventional. The Grey Wolf struck without warning and disappeared just as quickly, leaving behind only whispers of his presence and the wreckage of those who crossed him. The Grey Wolf's story began in the early years of humanity's expansion into the stars. He was trained as part of an elite group of operatives known for their expertise in covert operations. From a young age, he was taught to blend into any environment, to become invisible in plain sight. His training was rigorous, designed to break lesser men, but it only made him stronger. He learned to survive in the harshest conditions, to move silently through enemy lines, and to strike with precision when the moment was right. Over the years, he participated in numerous interstellar conflicts, each more complex and deadly than the last. His missions were classified, known only to a select few, but his successes were undeniable. He was a strategist, a tactician, and most importantly, a survivor. He understood the art of guerrilla warfare like no one else, using the terrain, the enemy's own tactics, and the element of surprise to turn the odds in his favor. Despite his successes, the constant battles took a toll on the Grey Wolf. After decades of service, he decided to leave the chaos of war behind, seeking peace in a small, remote human colony far from the central hubs of civilization. On Epsilon 4, he found the quiet life he had longed for. To the other colonists, he was just another settler, a man who kept to himself and lived a simple life. He rarely spoke of his past, and few would have guessed that the unassuming figure among them was once a feared and respected operative. He chose this isolated existence to escape the violence that had defined much of his life, to find solace in the routine of daily life. But even in peace, the instincts honed over years of conflict never left him. He remained vigilant, always aware of his surroundings, prepared for any threat that might come his way. Epsilon 4 was his sanctuary, a place where he could finally lay down his weapons and embrace the quiet he had earned after so many years of turmoil. The arrival of the Sargacs shattered the fragile peace of Epsilon 4. They descended on the colony with the same arrogance that had carried them through countless hunts. The colonists, unprepared for such a vicious attack, could only watch in terror as the Sargacs ships landed. Panic spread quickly through the settlement, as the colonists braced for what seemed like an inevitable slaughter. The Sargacs, confident in their superiority, began their assault, expecting little resistance. They were unaware that among the frightened colonists was a man who had faced far greater dangers and emerged victorious. The tension in the air was palpable as the Sargacs advanced, but the Grey Wolf remained calm. He observed their movements, assessed their tactics, and waited for the right moment to strike. This would not be the easy victory the Sargacs had anticipated. They were about to learn that the most dangerous predators are often the ones you never see coming. The Sargacs descended on Epsilon 4 with all the brutality they were known for. Their initial assault was swift and merciless, designed to break the spirit of the colonists before they could even think of resistance. With precision, they unleashed their advanced weaponry, tearing through the colony's meager defenses as if they were made of paper. Buildings crumbled under the onslaught, and the air was filled with the screams of the terrified settlers. The Sargacs, towering and fearsome in their battle armor, moved with lethal efficiency, hunting down anyone who dared to flee. The colonists, untrained and ill-equipped, were no match for these seasoned predators. Panic spread like wildfire as people scattered, desperately searching for safety that did not exist. The Sargacs relished the chaos, their predatory instincts fully engaged as they closed in on their prey, confident that this would be just another easy victory. But amidst the chaos, one man did not run. The Grey Wolf, watching from the shadows, saw the Sargacs for what they truly were, overconfident hunters who had never faced a challenge like him. As the Sargacs continued their assault, the Grey Wolf made his move. He chose his moment carefully, striking from the darkness with a precision that spoke of years of training. His first target was a group of Sargacs hunters who had strayed too far from the main force, believing themselves to be safe from any threat. With the element of surprise on his side, the Grey Wolf attacked swiftly and silently. He used the terrain to his advantage, moving through the shadows like a ghost. Before the Sargacs even realized they were under attack, several of their number had fallen, victims of the Grey Wolf's expert marksmanship and lethal hand-to-hand combat skills. He struck quickly, then vanished into the darkness, leaving the remaining Sargacs disoriented and unsure of where the next attack would come from. The Sargacs, for the first time in their long history of conquest, found themselves at a loss. They were the hunters, and yet now they felt like the hunted. As their comrades fell one by one, confusion began to set in. This was not the easy prey they had expected. They were dealing with an enemy who was not only skilled but also invisible, striking from the shadows and then disappearing without a trace. Fear began to creep into their ranks as they struggled to locate the source of the attacks. Their advanced sensors and tracking devices, which had never failed them before, were suddenly useless against this unseen adversary. The Sargacs had never faced a situation like this, and their confidence began to waver. The realization that they were not in control of the hunt was a foreign and terrifying concept to them. The Grey Wolf knew exactly how to exploit the Sargacs' growing fear and confusion. He employed guerrilla tactics with masterful precision, setting traps and using misdirection to keep the Sargacs off balance. He knew the terrain of Epsilon 4 better than they did, and he used it to his full advantage. Every movement he made was calculated, designed to draw the Sargacs into vulnerable positions where he could strike with maximum effect. He used their overconfidence against them, luring them into thinking they had him cornered, only to turn the tables at the last moment. The Sargacs, so used to being the predators, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. The Grey Wolf's tactics were relentless, wearing down the Sargacs both physically and mentally. They were beginning to understand that they were up against something far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated, a predator who was not only skilled but also willing to do whatever it took to protect his home. The hunt had begun, but it was the Sargacs who were now the prey. The Sargacs, once so confident in their superiority, were now grappling with an unfamiliar sensation, desperation. Their numbers were dwindling rapidly, and no matter how hard they tried to regroup and counterattack, they found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. The Grey Wolf's relentless assaults had left them disoriented and vulnerable, their usual tactics proving ineffective against an enemy who seemed to anticipate their every move. Attempts to form defensive positions were thwarted by the Grey Wolf's precise strikes, and efforts to track him down led only to more casualties. The Sargacs were not accustomed to being on the losing side, and the frustration of their helplessness began to eat away at their resolve. For the first time, they felt the sharp edge of fear, a fear that grew with every loss they suffered at the hands of this unseen predator. The Grey Wolf knew that physical attacks alone would not be enough to defeat the Sargacs. He needed to break them mentally as well. He began to employ psychological warfare, using fear and intimidation to shatter their morale. The Sargacs were proud and arrogant, but the Grey Wolf turned these traits against them. He left behind the bodies of their fallen comrades in carefully chosen locations, each one a grim reminder of their failures. He manipulated the environment to create a sense of constant danger, making the Sargacs jump at shadows and question their own senses. At night, he used their own communications systems to broadcast eerie, distorted messages that sowed doubt and confusion among their ranks. The once unshakable confidence of the Sargacs began to crumble as they realized that they were not just fighting a human. They were facing a predator who had mastered the art of psychological warfare. Every moment of hesitation, every flicker of doubt, was magnified by the Grey Wolf's relentless tactics, eroding the Sargacs' belief in their own invincibility. As the Sargacs continued to suffer losses, internal conflicts began to surface. Their leadership, once unquestioned, was now under scrutiny as the rank-and-file hunters started to doubt the decisions being made. Whispers of dissent spread through the ranks, with some questioning whether their leaders truly understood the nature of the enemy they were facing. The unity that had once been their greatest strength was now fracturing under the pressure of constant defeat. The Sargacs had always prided themselves on their discipline and coordination, but now they were unraveling, each loss deepening the rift between their leaders and soldiers. Paranoia began to take hold as they suspected each other of cowardice or betrayal. In the face of an enemy they could neither see nor predict, the Sargacs were beginning to turn on each other, their once solid cohesion crumbling into chaos. The stage was set for the final confrontation. The Grey Wolf had whittled down the Sargacs to a desperate, fractured group, but they were still dangerous, perhaps more so in their desperation. The remaining Sargacs hunters, now reduced to a shadow of their former might, knew that they were being hunted, and that their only hope of survival lay in defeating the Grey Wolf. But they were no longer the predators in this scenario. The Grey Wolf had turned the tables, and the Sargacs were now the prey, facing an enemy who had mastered the art of the hunt in ways they could never have imagined. The final battle loomed, and with it, the inevitable conclusion to a hunt that had gone terribly wrong for the galaxy's most feared predators. The final battle was nothing short of a deadly chess game, with every move calculated and precise. The Grey Wolf knew that this was the moment everything had been building toward, and he could not afford even a single mistake. The remaining Sargacs, though weakened and desperate, were still formidable adversaries, their instincts honed by centuries of hunting. But the Grey Wolf had spent a lifetime mastering the art of combat, and he used every trick he had learned to outmaneuver them. He lured the Sargacs into carefully set traps, exploiting their desperation to draw them into positions where they were vulnerable. Each encounter was a test of nerves and skill, with the Grey Wolf staying one step ahead, using the terrain and his intimate knowledge of the Sargacs' tactics to stay out of their reach. The tension was palpable, the stakes higher than they had ever been. The Grey Wolf fought with a cold, relentless focus, knowing that a single misstep could mean the end, not just for him, but for the entire colony he had sworn to protect. As the battle raged on, the Sargacs began to realize the full extent of their miscalculation. They had come to Epsilon 4 expecting an easy victory, but now they were being systematically hunted by a single human. Their disbelief was evident in every frantic attempt to regroup and strike back, but it was too late. The Grey Wolf's strategy was flawless, his execution precise. One by one, the Sargacs fell, their numbers dwindling until only a few remained. The shock of their defeat was written in the way they hesitated, the fear in their eyes as they faced an enemy who had turned their own tactics against them. The arrogance that had driven them to this point had been shattered, replaced by a desperate need to survive. But survival was not an option. The Grey Wolf moved with the precision of a predator, taking down the last of the Sargacs with the same cold efficiency that had defined his every move since the battle began. The final moments were a stark contrast to the confidence the Sargacs had displayed when they first arrived on Epsilon 4. Now they were nothing more than prey, caught in the trap of their own making, brought low by the very species they had underestimated. In the silence that followed the last Sargacs' fall, the Grey Wolf stood alone, the weight of what had transpired settling over him. He had fought to protect the colony, but at what cost? The violence, the bloodshed. It was a reminder of the life he had tried to leave behind, the life of a soldier constantly at war. As he surveyed the battlefield, the bodies of the Sargacs scattered around him, he felt a deep sense of weariness. This was not the peace he had sought, but it was the reality of the world he lived in. The Grey Wolf knew he had done what was necessary, that he had saved countless lives by taking up arms once more. But the toll it took on him was undeniable. His thoughts turned to the future, to the colony he had fought so hard to protect. Perhaps now, with the threat of the Sargacs gone, they could rebuild, and he could finally find the peace that had eluded him for so long. But even as he considered this, he knew that the scars of this battle would remain with him, a permanent reminder of the cost of survival. The story of what happened on Epsilon 4 spread quickly through the galaxy, a tale of one man's stand against an unstoppable force. The Grey Wolf's actions became legend, a warning to any who might think of humanity as easy prey. The defeat of the Sargacs sent shockwaves through the cosmos, their fall a symbol of the dangers of underestimating those who fight with everything they have to protect what is theirs. The colony on Epsilon 4 was saved, but more than that, it was a turning point in the way the galaxy viewed humanity. The Grey Wolf's legacy would live on, not just as a hero who defended his home, but as a symbol of human resilience and the fierce determination that lay at the heart of every person willing to fight for their survival. The legend of the Grey Wolf would serve as a reminder to all predators: the most dangerous enemy is the one who refuses to be hunted.